go down this rabbit hole all day.
I mean, I like rabbit holes. They're fun.
But we both know that something just is fishy here. Something just isn't right here.
Absolutely.
And then when they say things like, well, nobody's coming to take your guns.
Yeah.
Bitch, Beto O'Rourke said it.
Welcome to another episode of the Colion Noir podcast. And joining me today is the lovely Jerah Hutchins.
Hello.
How's it going, Mama?
I mean, if I was any better, I'd be twins.
That was very descriptive.
It was. It's pretty on point, I think.
So I take it to say that you're pretty damn busy.
I am.
That's par for the course for you. You've always kind of been a go-getting nonstop. I'm projecting here.
You are projecting.
Yeah, I'm projecting.
Yes, busy all the time, loving it, would have it no other way.
Gotcha. So let's start from the beginning, right? Because I've never had you on the podcast before, though we've known each other for a while. Wait, have I ever had you on the podcast?
No, you haven't. And I'm trying to think about how long we've known each other. I think I met you in 2016.
Yeah.
So it's been almost 10 years.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Yeah, we're old now, man.
Oh, man, don't remind me. Damn, we are old. But I guess that's how the age thing works, right? But so you got into the gun stuff. I always say gun stuff. I always tell people, like, how did you get into the gun stuff? Because, a lot of people's backgrounds are pretty varied. And I know mine was a bit non-traditional. And then I know a lot of people who've been, I've had a gun since I came out of the womb. What was that story for you?
My gun story is actually a lot more traditional. I mean, I'm from a very rural area of Texas. My grandpa was really into it. Mm-hmm. I grew up that way. Like we would seriously hunt before school. Rifle racks in the back of the trucks.
So that's actually a thing.
It's a thing.
You hear that a lot, right? And it's like, I remember back in my days when, everybody had rifles.
You don't hear it so much anymore.
Well, no, you can't. Because you can't even keep a gun locked in your center console in your car damn near. Because it'd be stolen in probably 30 minutes. Now I live in the city. You despise the city.
Not a huge fan of Dallas. City of Dallas.
What's wrong with Dallas?
Well, first of all, can we just talk about how hard it is to drive downtown here?
It's not that bad.
It's terrible.
It really isn't that bad.
You have streets that it's like one way, and then all of a sudden it's two ways, and then it splits, and then it goes this way, but this way is one way and this way is another. It's the worst.
I would give you a little more leeway if you hadn't lived here for as long as you've lived here. Because you're right. When I first moved here, I've never seen a downtown so confusing.
It's very confusing.
But once you understand it, you understand it. And then it just becomes second nature.
Well, I don't think you should have to learn how to drive downtown to the extent that you have to do in Texas. Like, I think that we should both just agree and admit that whoever designed this was completely on crack.
No, I mean, I'll give you that because typically downtowns are a grid system, right? Mm-hmm. It's basically straight lines this way and then straight lines this way. And then you build everything in between.
Right.
Somebody gave a kid an Etch-a-Sketch and said, here, draw downtown. And that's essentially what you have now.
Thank you.
I'm still not giving you any leeway, largely because you've lived here as long as you've lived here. Now, if you were new, I'd be like, you know what? You're absolutely right. So technically, you're like half right. So I'll give you that.
Yeah, man. I just grew up that way, and it was awesome. We were surgeons with shotguns by the time we were 16. Mm-hmm. It was a really awesome way to grow up. It was actually kind of a culture shock for me to move out here. I moved out here when I was 19 because I wanted to find a job that wasn't like a grocery store or a ranch or a gas station. Wanted to do something totally different, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do yet. So I moved out here with my best friend from high school. And I remember when we got our first apartment together, it was actually she lived in a dorm on the Colion County Community College campus.
Okay.
And I remember like barreling in there with my shotgun, And this was before campus carry, everything.
Okay.
We didn't really know. We weren't aware. I mean, we were kids, but we knew that. I mean, we had these weapons, and we didn't understand all the laws that surrounded them, but we knew how to use them. And so I got schooled really quick on, hey, you can't
bring shotgun into the dorm
college, on the college campus. So I had to figure that out. But then, but a lot of people were, like several of the neighbors and stuff that would come over, they would ask me, like, why did you feel like you needed to have a gun in the house? And I'm like, but why don't you feel like I didn't understand the dynamic, right? I didn't understand that kids didn't grow up that way.
You know what I think is weird? people from the city who live in the city who probably need guns the most find it odd that people from the country feel the need to own a firearm when you guys probably need it the least comparative to people living in the city.
Sure.
It's so weird to me. I don't understand it. Like, even back when I was like before my whole super pro gun days, I kind of understood, yeah, you might sort of want a gun in the city. Where the contrast is weird because it's just like in the rural environments, yes, of course, you still need protection. And you can make the argument that it's going to take exceedingly longer for a police officer to get to your place out in the rural area than it would be in the city, right? So you can make that argument that you more so probably need a gun in a rural environment, but you absolutely need a gun in a city environment, as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's for two completely separate reasons, right? I mean, like when you live in the country, it's more like animals, right? Like you're feeding yourself, or you're hiking or hunting, or things like that. I mean, sure, you can use it for protection, and we know that, and we knew that growing up, but we didn't really need it for that a lot. It was more for the latter. Like in the city, it's completely reversed. You're not hunting in the city. Yeah. You're probably not hiking a lot in the city. It's really the reasoning really kind of flips the switch when you get to the city, because you need it for more. You're thinking more about other people trying to harm me than you are anything else. And so that is it. But I think that makes it even more, I think that proves your point even more. Yeah. I think it makes it even more complicated.
Yeah, it does.
Because you have two different mindsets, because you're growing up in two different places with two different cultures and two different mindsets and two different sets of priorities, frankly.
Right? Yeah, no, you're right. Because I know for me personally, anytime I go out into the country, I don't care where I'm going, I make sure I have a gun. And it's like you said, it's more for the animal side of it.
Yeah, you go to weird Utah.
I tell people all the time, I'm the most boring traveler on the planet. I go to the most stereotypically boring places in the world. If it's Middle America, I've been there. Yep. Right. And without fail, I will have a gun on me. And it's not, like you said, it's not necessarily for two-legged creatures. It's more for the four-legged creatures that kind of make me a little bit unnerved.
No, I hear you. But when I was living in the city, and I was kind of approaching my 20s, and I got into my early 20s, and I got my first place alone, and I had a stalker, situation, and that kind of made me think, man, I was a competition 3-gunner from age 14 to almost 23.
Okay.
I think
I did not know
22 or 23. Yeah. So, and it's weird that you didn't know that.
Never knew that. No.
But I was, and I got a blood clot in my eye, and so I became cross-eye dominant. So
I'm sorry. Wait, re-explain that again to me.
So I used to be right. Okay. And now I'm right-left. So
was that because you had to train yourself to shoot right-left as a result of your blood clot?
Yeah, I couldn't. I couldn't shoot long guns anymore, right-handed at all, because I couldn't see. So on a shotgun, I couldn't see the sights. Like I couldn't see that bead at the very end of the shotgun anymore. And then for rifles, I couldn't see out of a scope. So I got a blood clot in my eye, and it killed. But by the time it was diagnosed, it had killed all the nerves in the top of my eye. So if I close this eye and I look at you, I can only see the bottom half of everything. Gotcha. So I can see the whole bottom half of the room, bottom half of your face. But if I go like this, I can see perfectly. So I became immediately left eye dominant.
Gotcha.
And so that, of course, that's going to squash your game.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So I was like, well, if I want to keep shooting long guns, which I did, because I love to do clay tournaments. I love to shoot, I love to hunt with rifles. And so I was like, I got to figure this out. And so I spent 6 months training on the left eye and shooting long guns left-handed. And then kind of as a byproduct, it made me ambidextrous with a pistol, which was really cool. So when we do, so now when I do like multi-platform matches or, if I'm just doing training with 2 different weapons, it's awesome because I can have my long gun on this side and then I have my pistol on this side, and they're not running over each other. Okay. You know what I mean? Yep. So it's actually
I see what you're getting
at. It's a benefit, so I don't have to move the rifle over to get to the pistol, or it's not running over my sling or anything like that. So
you can shoot a handgun fine.
I can shoot a handgun with either hand.
Gotcha, but you're still cross-eyed. Mm-hmm. Well, you're still using your left eye. Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So what happened was it made me, I'm faster with my right hand, but I'm more accurate with my left hand.
Okay, I can see that.
So if I'm shooting, so it makes it really tough if I'm shooting a match for me to pick which hand I want.
Okay, depending on.
Because if you want, it's the precision is the
Yeah.
balance between speed and accuracy,
Yeah.
so it's.
Okay. So then how did you get into the training side of things? Because I know you were doing the 3-gun stuff. And so at what point did you said, hey, I actually want to start training people? And not because, and your training was it always focused on self-defense, or were you training people from a different perspective? Like, I don't know, training them in competition sense.
I've never trained anybody in competition shooting.
Okay.
That happened kind of by happenstance. I started taking more defensive-oriented pistol classes after this stalker incident that I had.
Do you want to talk about it?
And we could totally talk about it. I mean, he just, I was home. He showed up at my house. I had a shotgun in my house, like we talked about before, the same one. And that worked itself out. But it made me think, what am I going to do if this happens again and I'm not here? Right? Like, I had the complete tactical advantage, right? I knew my house. He didn't. I knew my weapon. He didn't know I had one.
Gotcha.
Right? So that was fine. But like, what if he catches me at the mall or the grocery store, or whatever, getting out of my car, for Christ's sake. I mean, on the way in the house.
So was he stalking you for a longer period of time, or was this something that was just short-lived?
It was a few weeks.
A few weeks, okay.
It was a few weeks. But that's why I tell people, like, you can't really sleep on what someone says they will do. You can't overreact to it either, but there has to be this sort of area that you live in where you go, you know what, I'm not sure if you're going to do that or not, but I'm going to go ahead and assume you will, so I'm going to go ahead and prepare for that, right?
Yeah.
And you can't do that by calling the police every time, because they don't have the bandwidth to respond to this all the time.
Yeah.
They don't have the people that they can, they're not just going to send somebody to guard your house. That's silly, right? Yeah. So you have to be able to deal with this yourself. And it's the hardest thing for me to convince women that they have to do is I was like, you have to literally be your own first responder, and you have to deal with this yourself, especially if you're single and you live alone.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so hard for a lot of, especially single women, to kind of take on that mindset of I have to be my own first responder?
I work a lot with, I have a nonprofit called W.A.D.E, and you've actually donated to it before. And I take women physically out of domestic violence situations. And what I mean by that is that if they tell me they're ready to get out, I will literally go to their house and take them out.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I'll show up, help them pack their stuff.
Yeah.
Homeboy will sit on the couch and watch me,
okay.
Right? Because a lot of times abusers, when they're confronted with someone and they can tell, like, they can just tell by your energy,
yeah,
that, and this probably isn't somebody that's going to put up with my bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I take them out, and the excuse that I hear, the statement that I hear so much from these women is, he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean to do it. He just gets angry. Or from women whose husbands or boyfriends or whatever, that maybe they just yell at them, or verbally abuse them, and they think that it's never going to escalate to anything more than that. Yeah. I'm like, sweetheart, you're just living in fantasy land over here. I mean, you're literally like, you have walked through the door of Narnia and never to return. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it goes down. So many women they're very naive. And I think that's a big character trait between men and women. I think it's just some sort of like psychological thing that is this difference between men and women. It is, women are a lot more naive than men are.
In what sense? In terms of?
In terms of physical defense.
Gotcha. Okay.
In terms of physical defense.
Right.
Now, I think maybe as we've seen the decline of men, kind of like retreating into this beta space.
Yeah.
And that's what I say all the time. I'm like, if you teach your kids self-defense, it's literally the thing. I truly believe it's the biggest thing that keeps your sons from turning into betas and your daughters from becoming bait.
That's a good way to put it.
You know what I mean?
It's a damn good way to put it, actually. Yeah.
I really truly believe that, and so I just think that there's a naivety. I don't even know how you say that word.
I say it two different ways. I have naivete and then naivety.
Yeah,
I think they're both correct, honestly.
That women have, and they think it's not going to happen to me. He doesn't mean it. He really, at his core, he loves me. He's just angry. And they don't really think that it'll escalate to that point. And it's the biggest fight that I have.
Yeah.
And it's very, very frustrating. And sometimes it's just demoralizing sometimes. And you just want to you almost want to do the thing that the men are going to do to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, come on, girl. Get out of it.
Now, have you been in a situation where you went out to get a woman out and then you've had a guy actually test you?
So, no.
Okay.
I haven't. But I will say that there have been a couple of circumstances where it's been a little touchy. Mm-hmm. Sometimes what these women will do is keep very important information from you, mm-hmm. because on the one hand, they don't want to be in the situation where they get their ass whooped anymore.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they still have this sort of trauma bond to this man, and they're trying to protect him. And so there was one situation where the woman withheld that this man was a fugitive.
Gotcha.
And so, and I could kind of figured it out because she was super, that's what I'm looking for. She really didn't want the police involved mm-hmm. at all. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when I was asking her, when I was interviewing her, and I was like, okay, so I kind of need to know this guy's description so that I know who I'm looking for if we come to the house or if he comes there while we're there and we're getting your stuff. And I asked his name, and she knew his first name. And then when she was saying his last name, she goes, I think it's, and I was like, how long have you been dating this guy? She's like, 2 years. And I'm like, how do you date somebody for 2 years and you don't know? I even know your real name. You know what I'm saying? Like,
you think you know.
I know. But you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you not know that information about somebody that you've been dating or that and they were living together? And so I did a little digging. I did a little recon on the situation and found out that he was a wanted fugitive, had warrants out for his arrest. And so I wasn't going to go and do that alone. But a lot of times I can't. A lot of times law enforcement won't help me. Okay. They don't have the bandwidth to do it. They don't want to get involved. We've tied law enforcement's hands with liability so tightly that they won't even help these women get out of these situations. Now, another statistic too is most of them go back. So
that's
of course they're like, what's the point? Now, my program, I've been doing this since 2019. We rescued our 110th woman in May, and we've had one go back.
Okay.
And so the difference is that we don't just do all of the things that the battered women's shelters do. We add a component, and once they've had the proper counseling and once they've been signed off on by a mental health professional, we teach them how to defend themselves. We put them through an academy, and it's not just one lesson. Yeah. It's an academy that they go through, and that's what the donor dollars go through. And so, but here's the thing. Battered women's shelters, politicians, law enforcement, they're not ready to have this conversation. They're not ready for someone to go, I have the data and the proof that shows you that if you add this component to it and you teach them that they don't have to be a victim anymore, you teach them how to protect themselves, you teach them how to be aware, you teach them how to protect their kids, you teach them the legalities that they can, the law that they have on their side to protect them from this, they don't go back.
Well, government's not going to teach independence because they need dependency in order to function and to justify their power.
Of course.
Right? So the moment you said that you had an academy where you taught them how to defend themselves, I might automatically knew the government would be completely hands off and have nothing to do with it. Because in their minds, they look at it as, well, if we do that, and this is where my little conspiratorial hat comes on. But it's, if we do that, then we don't have enough victims to tell that they're victims and that they need the big daddy government to protect them.
Sure.
And to keep voting for us, right? It's kind of the same thing like when you talk some of these when you hear some of these gun groups, these anti-gun groups, and they start talking, they'll use domestic violence as a means and justification to push gun control, to say, oh, well, we need to get the guns out of the hands of the abusers. And
well, because they say that, oh, well, a gun in the house is more likely to be turned on you than it is to be used against an attacker, which isn't true. But it's two horns on the same goat, right? It's, we have to teach.
They're so country.
Shut up. But it is. I mean, it's. We can do two things at the same time, right? There has to be a way for us to. And I'm not opposed to reaching these men too, these abusive men. I don't think that they are outside of the realm of rehabilitation. I just think that there's nobody willing to help them. I think you have all of these resources for women. You have battered women's shelters. They give them phones, safe phones.
Yeah.
They help them, with legal paperwork to do restraining orders and protective orders. But what about helping this man understand that what he's doing is super harmful, is probably going to land him in jail. And not only that, but, his reputation in the community is shot. I mean, when you hit a woman,
yeah, it's pretty much game over.
It's pretty much game over. And so who's helping these men? Who's helping to rehabilitate these men? Because if we would do that, then that gun statistic, or that what a phantom gun statistic that they like, I don't even know who proved. Where is this? Where is the study?
So what they like to do is
who's helping them?
They like to, of course, it'd be me, who I thought my phone's off. They like to. Shut up, Peter.
We can edit that out.
No, he's not. So what they like to do, they have tons of money, and instead of putting that money towards actually finding a solution, what they'll do is they'll put that money towards finding a justification, or creating a study to find a justification for pushing more gun control. And so then they'll create a study, and then they'll cherry pick data and then say this, and this is why we need to ban guns, or we need to restrict guns in some way or fashion. That's what they like to do. And so, because their ultimate goal really honestly isn't really solving the problem. That's not the goal.
No, and that's true too. I also think that's coupled with a lot of politicians are getting really bad advice. Trump, for instance, with this bump stock ban.
Yeah.
Trump doesn't know anything about guns.
He doesn't. And I tried to tell people that quite a bit. And I think where people get the perception that Trump knows anything about firearms is because of his sons. His sons know a lot about firearms. Trump knows jack shit about firearms.
Well, his sons know a lot about, I think, and don't get me wrong, they could know more than I think they do. But if I'm theorizing, if I'm speculating, I think his sons know a lot about how to use guns. I don't think they know a lot about ballistics. I don't think they know a lot about law. I don't think they understand that part of it.
I do think, and in all fairness, I do think, yes, you're absolutely correct. I think they are just they just got introduced to the conversation side of the gun issue when Trump ran that first time. And then they started their relationship with the NRA and so forth and so on. That's when I think they first became aware of it. And as you and I know, it takes quite a bit to really kind of get a hold of what what are the dynamics within the conversation when it comes to guns, and understanding the points, and understanding where people draw a line in the sand, and understanding why a bump stock, though it may seem kind of pointless, it may seem like it's not that big of a deal, why it's important to protect it, because otherwise it'll set a precedent that'll inevitably turn into a bigger snowball.
Well, but we also have a ton of politicians that don't understand that this is essentially a national security issue. Chipping away at the Second Amendment is a national security issue. We are the most powerful nation on the planet, and a big reason for that is because we are an armed nation. But so if somebody tries to come and invade the United States, Pearl Harbor is an incredible example of this. Okay? If someone tries to invade the United States, it's not just our insanely awesome military, maybe not so much anymore, but that they're going to have to deal with. It's us, it's the civilians, it's the citizens, it's the people in the communities that are going to be able to fight back as well. They know that.
Okay.
They know that.
So why do you think they're against it? I have my ideas, but I'd like to hear yours. So why do you think they don't push the idea of empowering people to arm themselves so that they can not only defend themselves and families, but also this country if it came to it?
I'm gonna. Are you ready for me to put
my dear, go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna look up this guy's name really quick because I just took a little mini class. So if you don't know who Julie McCarty is, she runs an organization called the True Texas Project. It's awesome, and they put on a really cool sort of. Well, it was their 15th birthday party thing, but it was a bunch of classes, right? And this guy who used to be in the FBI, he put on a class, and it was basically a 45-minute thing, and he has an Italian last name. That's another reason why I liked him, because I'm Italian too. And anyway, I'll look up his name. I'll send it to you in a minute. But he was talking about how Hamas has basically infiltrated our government.
Okay.
There are a lot of key people in key advisory positions in Washington in the White House, in the Pentagon, that are Hamas.
Okay.
They're absolutely 100% Hamas.
So how does he know this?
And because he was in the FBI.
Okay.
And he was like, we tried. He was like, back when the FBI was awesome, when it was good, he was like, there were
When was
many
this?
of us.
Because-
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
Wait a minute, hold on.
He was like, this is, yeah, shut up. He was like, this is how we tried to speak out about this, and we were all shunned. We were all like, stifled.
So when you say Hamas is in the White House,
I mean, actual Hamas.
are we talking like they're in elected positions, or they're with
some
part
of
of
them
the
are
staff?
in elected positions, and some of them are in advisory positions.
Okay.
To very key people, decision makers. And why do you think that why do you think that we can't say things like illegal aliens anymore? Why do you think that we can't use any of this terminology for people that are literally infiltrating our border? And I'll tell you something else.
Oh, she's got the finger out. I'm scared.
If I was a group of people that became drunk with power, if I was a group of people that wanted to maintain control of a populace, and I knew that it would be almost impossible for me to disarm the nation in order to do it, I'll tell you what I would do.
Okay.
I would flood the nation with people who weren't from here, who don't understand the values of America, who don't have respect for the Constitution, who don't understand the necessity for the Second Amendment, and I would let them take over like locusts.
Okay.
I would fight for them to be able to vote before they had any citizenship. Because what is citizenship? What does that get you? What do you have to do before you become a citizen?
It gives you access to rights.
No, but what do you have to do to get those rights? What's the pathway to citizenship? What's part of that? You have to learn about the Constitution.
Oh,
You
okay.
have to learn about the
it from
founding
that
of
standpoint.
America.
Gotcha.
You
Okay.
have to learn
Yeah.
about these things. You're learning the values of America. You're being exposed to why we are the greatest nation on earth. Boy, if I was somebody that wanted to maintain control of the greatest nation on earth, that's how I'd do it.
So
brilliant.
you're kind of piggybacking a little bit off of a theory that I have in terms of how they utilize like the violence in the inner cities to justify more gun control. The odd thing is I kind of feel like it would have the opposite effect. I think inevitably what will end up happening is you'll have the people in the country who are citizens becoming more valiant about protecting the Second Amendment. And thus, as a result, empowering the Second Amendment actually more so than weakening it. At the same time, I do believe that it could also have the inverse effect of creating a certain level of chaos with people who are immigrating into the country or basically just being let into the country. And as a result of that, that chaos can be used to justify all types of things in terms of giving the government more power. Essentially, well, if you want this to stop, if you want this chaos to stop, you need to give us more power and leverage to do that.
Well, creating the dependency that you talked about
Exactly.
earlier. Creating that dependency, yes.
So I don't not believe it. I'm just trying to see, because I tend to give them a little more credit than most people do. And
well, the guy's name that did the class, you should have him on your podcast.
Absolutely.
His name is John Guandolo, and he has a whole presentation.
Well, I'm going to go watch it afterwards.
I think will make you a believer.
Okay.
Like, and I got it in person.
Now, keep in mind, what I'm not saying is that there isn't a deliberate attempt to have a purposely porous border. I do believe that is the case. Now, to the extent that I believe that the White House is being overrun by Hamas, my tinfoil hat is a little bit smaller than yours.
Mine's like, it doesn't fit in this room.
Yeah.
I had to leave it outside.
Now,
outside the door.
but I've been wrong before, which is very rare, like really rare, like really exceptionally fucking. No, I'm joking.
Well, I was wrong once. I thought I was wrong once, but I was actually wrong about that.
That's actually pretty good. I like that. I'm actually going to steal that.
You can feel free to use it.
I'm definitely going to steal that. But no, I at the same time, I don't think I put it past them either. It's a weird kind of mental gymnastics that I kind of engage in when it comes to conspiracy theories of that sort, right?
Another one you should watch is, and you may have already watched it, but Sean Ryan interviewed, I think her name is Sarah Adams, but her handle is Super Bad. I mean, how could she be wrong? Like, I mean, do you know who I'm talking about?
No, I have no idea what
Oh
you're
my
talking
God. Okay. So watch it.
about. Okay.
She was a CIA terrorist tracker.
Mm-hmm.
And she has so much information in her head. It's like a computer. Yeah. And she literally, she's on there for like 4 hours, and she's telling Sean about how we're sending like $40 million a week to Al Qaeda and Hamas in planes. Okay.
What's
And then a lot of them they disguise NGOs like as, like Hamas has infiltrated these NGOs, and they're using all this money to fund their organization. It's wild. It's the wildest. It's probably the wildest interview I've ever seen in my life.
Well, considering all the things that I've learned about the CIA over the years, I wouldn't put it past them. However, what is the most? No, no.
It's well, I mean, I don't know. It could be, but it's not her. She's saying, "Look, I'm trying to like let people know." I mean, and how much is she sticking her neck out right now, even talking about it?
So my mind, when I see stuff like that or hear stuff like that, people say stuff like that, my mind instantly goes to, how are they able to say these things? That's initially what my mind goes to. It's like, I hear you, and I want to agree with you because, my little conspiracy theory hat, my small one. But I go, I don't know how much value to put on what I'm being told and how much of it I need to keep a realistic perspective on. Because the thing about conspiracy theories is you can go down a pretty dark and rabbit hole, right?
I mean, she knows.
But then the question is, how do you disprove it?
That's exactly true. You're not wrong, but I'm telling you, like, she knows their names. Mm-hmm. She knows who they're married to, who their children are. There's some kind of weird link to the Bin Laden family that all this kind of like wraps up into. And it's just, I mean, you have, and I know you stay up all night because you're a night owl and that's what you do. You need to watch that interview. He's actually interviewed her twice. Uh-huh. So watch the second one, the most recent one that happened like a month ago. But we can go down this rabbit hole all day.
I mean, I like rabbit holes. They're fun.
But we both know that something just is fishy here. Something just isn't right here.
Absolutely.
Like this what we are living in right now is a little bit unprecedented, at least for our lifetime.
Is it though?
For our lifetime.
Our lifetime, yes. Very much for our lifetime. And when I say is it though, it's in my mind, I inherently attribute a sense of nefariousness when it comes to governments in general.
Yeah,
right?
You should.
So whether it's taking place now or taking place in the 50s, taking place in the 40s or the 30s, I always assume that the government's up to some bullshit. That's why when you were talking about the FBI, when the FBI was whatever the fuck it was, I was like, well, based on the historical knowledge I have on the FBI, I'm like, I don't necessarily know if
and then when they say things like, well, nobody's coming to take your guns. Yeah. Bitch, Beto O'Rourke said it. He said it when he ran for governor and senator of Texas. He said, hell yeah, we're going to take your AR-15s. So don't think that it didn't come out of nobody's mouth, because it came out of Francis's mouth. It really, and Francis can come and take it. Is Francis going to come to my house and take it? I wish he would show up at my door and try to take it.
Good old Francis.
I mean, But I mean, they're literally denying what's coming out of their mouth, which is just wild to me. So,
well, because I think a lot of people don't want to necessarily. You got to think about it. A lot of people have a very mental dependency on the government, right? And so, when you have a mental dependency on the government, you don't want to think that it's. Let's analogize it and parallel it to the women that you deal with and the men that they're supposedly not wanting to be with, but then doing everything in the power to protect it.
Yeah.
Right. Like you said, it's almost kind of a. I can't believe what's it called? Whatever the syndrome is, Stockholm syndrome, right? Yep. People tend to have a Stockholm syndrome when it comes to the government. You can show them scores and scores and scores of terrible shit that the governments have done over the past, and still to this day they'll feel like, well, our government is different. In a weird way, they look at America and they understand that America is different. And they say, our government is not capable of that, or our government won't be able to do that because we're America. But then at the same time, we'll try to upend and undermine everything that makes America America and gives us the power to protect itself from a government being that evil, i.e. things like the Second Amendment. Right. So what happens is they look at the government and it's like, oh, the government won't do that. No, I trust the government. There's no way they're going to do anything crazy like that. Like take your guns. They're not going to do that. Right.
Try to assassinate a president. They're not going to do that.
But then the thing about it, though, is you have to the problem is it's a lot harder to confront that reality that, look, the people that you have been depending on mentally and physically for decades decades, are actually quite capable of doing monstrous things to you. And then you have to accept that. And when you accept that, then you have to realize, fuck, I'm on my own. And that is a scary fucking position for a lot of people to be in when it comes to the idea, because a lot of people have made the government their God. So essentially what you're doing is you're removing the belief of a deity in their minds. And so they don't want to believe that. And so the idea that, oh, they're not going to take our guns. You're just ramblings, tinfoil hat wearing crazy lunatics, right? But even when they say it, oh, we're going to take your guns, they can just dismiss it.
Well, and they'll use points that directly contradict their point. You know, like George, who's the guy that was on Star Trek that played Sulu? George, what's his last name? Takei or whatever.
Yeah. Peter knows everybody.
Yeah. So he had posted something the other day on Twitter where he was like, hey, if you don't think that the government will literally come and like take you out of your home and put you in a concentration camp, like my family lived that. And I'm like, well, then why are you simping for the party that did it? Like, it's literally all you do every day.
I think there is something to be said, too, about, and I was actually talking about this with my friend earlier today. When you start talking about the Democrats, right? I'm assuming that's what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are two parties within the Democrats. You have your classical liberals, and then you have your leftists. Actually, there's three. You have your classical liberals, you have your leftists, and then you have your complete left psychopaths, right? And the leftists and the psychopaths are kind of in the same space a little bit, but then you have your classical liberals, people who kind of hold on to the romanticized aspect of what being a Democrat is, right? One of the people, Bill Maher, is what I would typically call a classical liberal, except for he's kind of let his Trump derangement syndrome kind of take over his brain in a lot of ways. But if you notice, sometimes he kind of speaks out against a lot of things that Democrats do. And he does it because he's looking at it from a classical liberal stance. And so I don't know this individual you're talking about in particular, but I'm just going to make a broad assumption. He's probably mentally more a classical liberal than he is a leftist, which is why he can have this weird conflict of thought when it comes to the idea of, hey, the government can do this and they will do this, even though I'm part of a party who espouses more empowerment to a government that can and will do this. So it's weird, but in a weird way, I see where they're coming from. I just think it's stupid.
I think that people call those people like JFK Democrats.
More or less.
You know?
Yeah, that's essentially, I agree with that.
Which essentially are really independents, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
That
I think now though we live in a place where being an independent is almost seen as being far right. Like I'm dead serious. Like it's shifted. But the left, they're essentially a cult. It's a cult. So if you don't believe what they believe in 110,000%, then you are a far right conservative nut job to them.
Right.
Whereas you could kind of sort of make the argument for the MAGA component of the Republican Party. But I think a lot of times what people confuse as enthusiasm, they think is cultism. But really it's enthusiasm, because I've seen countless times where people who are on the extreme right, who are on the MAGA side of the right, they're willing to have the conversations that are counter to their narrative. They're willing to talk and engage in those ideas. They may not agree with it, but I see them do it. You can't get that on the other side. The moment you have any type of belief system or thought process that is counter to their narrative, they either, one, ostracize you immediately or try to attack you. That's it. So they've become a cult, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, then in that too, you have the extremely toxic feminists who, if you even like breathe a word of a woman having any limitation whatsoever, I mean, they lose their damn minds.
Yeah.
They lose their minds. You know, there's a lot of chatter on the social media channels now about these female Secret Service agents that were protecting Trump, and how, you know, this is a DEI nightmare. They're ill-equipped to do this. They didn't get him out in time. And there was actually a comparison done on the Patrick Bet David podcast. They had Eric Prince on, and they were doing this comparison of when Reagan
Reagan
got
was
shot at,
versus when I saw
and when
that.
and how
Yeah.
quickly they got him out, how quickly they contained that situation versus this ridiculous nightmare that we saw,
Yeah.
that happened over the weekend. And this is the part where I have to agree. And there were a lot of people especially on my social media, that were like, oh my God, I can't believe that they're saying this about these brave Secret Service women and, XYZ and all of this and all of that. And I'm like, if you're looking at me to be offended by those statements, I'm not, because I agree with them. I agree. There's the scope of the Secret Service is bigger than just protecting the president.
Yeah.
I mean, they do all kinds of investigations. They investigate a lot of financial crimes and everything. There's space for women everywhere. Okay. Like, this is what I don't understand. Like, there's space for women in the military. There's space for women in private security. There's space for women in the Secret Service. There's space for women in law enforcement, but not everywhere. And that's really where we need to kind of like pull the horse back here and go, hey, pull the reins back and go, listen, you need to understand your own limitations. I mean, myself, I've gotten 3 requests, from 2 of them from private security agencies and 1 from a small law enforcement agency, that said, we need you to come in and work with these women because we have to meet a DEI quota. And we need you to get these women ready to train with us. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. Because if this is what they want to do for a living, they need to get ready. And they need to train with men just like I did. I've been teaching guns for 16 years. How do you think that I got there? I started training with men even when it was embarrassing, even when it was hard, even when I thought it was more than I could handle. And I humbled myself and took their critique and their feedback, and I made myself really good at what I do. But that doesn't mean that I can go and protect the president. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I know where I'm at, and I know my place.
Yeah.
And I'm not relegating myself to anything less than where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, believe me, I think that if I would have had that ambition in my 20s, I'm telling you right now, I'd be a Secret Service agent. Okay. I didn't really have that ambition in my 20s.
Yeah.
But at the same time, do you want a fat chick that can't reholster her gun to protect you if you're the president of the United States of America?
Yeah. I will say, so I did a video talking about that. Well, partly talking about that. And I did think it was a bit of a joke, the way I saw how frantically they kind of look like chickens with their heads cut off, essentially. I initially was worried. I was like, why are they so frumpy? It made no sense to me. But then it kind of clicked. I'm pretty sure they're wearing armor underneath their clothing, which is probably the reason why they're looking a little frumpy. That said, there's a certain composure. There's a certain inherent ability in the way you conduct and hold yourself that lets somebody know that you're capable. Nothing I saw that day with the way that those individuals were moving, and I mean those women, nothing told me that they were capable of protecting the president.
There was one that was right in the front, and she's the one you can see her little ponytail bun thing, like in that picture.
Yeah.
You know, she, from what I saw, she was in it. Okay. There are women that are like that.
Yes. I've met them. I've known them.
You can't lower the standard or bring somebody special in to get them ready. You know, like I just had to jump in.
Yeah.
You know, and I was taking pistol classes with people that didn't want to teach me. You know, and I'm not saying woe is me, I'm crying about it or anything.
No, but
I'm just saying that people
you're,
were like, oh my God, this chick's gonna.
Your experience is your
take forever.
experience.
You know
right?
what I mean? And you had to kind of deal with that, you know, like when you're the only chick that walks into a class, you know, and people know that you're going to be the slow one or you're going to whatever, you know, then they're going to have that reaction because they want low speed, high drag, you know.
You know what's funny about that? I get that kind of too. Not because I'm a woman. Shut up, Peter. But I have gotten that to a degree in terms of me being a social media influencer, because there are admittedly a lot of people in the gun space who are considered influencers can't shoot for shit. And because I tend to be rather rather varied in terms of, you know, I do the 2A political stuff and guns stuff and stuff like that. I don't do a lot of shooting straight up on camera. And so there are a lot of people I'll go to courses and they assume I can't shoot. And so there'll be some little bit of teasing and stuff like that back and forth. So to a certain degree, I can kind of see where you're coming from. Until the shooting starts.
Sure. But then I think I think that when you train just like anybody else, when you expose yourself just like anybody else, I think that's how I became respected in the industry. Is, well, she's just willing to kind of do
the shit,
whatever it takes, and I may not ever be number one, in the class, but I'm not uncomfortable to train with men. As a matter of fact, it's the most real world experience that I've ever had. Is them showing me, unorthodox shooting positions and what are you going to do if this happens, and
because reality is reality.
Yeah, right? and you honestly, from a self-defense standpoint, I've seen other class, like I've taken a ton of these classes, and I'm almost taught in a different way. And I think it's a good thing because they're setting me up for the most success in the things that are going to be probable and plausible in my life, right? So, I'm not just going to hit some guy in the face and he's just going to oh, it's going to hurt so bad. You're like, oh, I'm pain. Yeah. That's never going to happen, So when they teach me go for the soft parts, they're setting me up for success. They're saying, hey, gouge that eye out. Punch him in the throat, stab him in the ear, kick him in the nuts. Those are all the things that's going to set me up for success. And so I don't mind being taught that way. And I don't mind, somebody going, hey, these are your limitations. Here's how we need to teach you. And I think more women need to do that instead of going, well, I can do it. And I can go and be a Navy SEAL. Yeah. Bitch, no, you can't.
Yeah. There's a glamorization and a romanticization that tends to happen when it comes to firearms and training. And when it's met with reality, things get ugly really quickly, and people don't understand how ugly reality is. And so that romanticization of the training component, the feel good training is what I call it.
Yeah.
It's it's going to suck when you're confronted in real life with how ugly reality can be. Now, that being said, how do you think, so for instance, when it comes to choosing a firearm for a woman, right? How do you think that should be approached? So if I had let's for all the husbands out there who have wives or guys who have girlfriends and they're trying to figure out, all right, how do I choose a firearm for the woman in my life? Or how do I position her in such a way to get the best firearm for her from a self-defense
standpoint? It's the second way. It's the latter versus the former. So husbands and boyfriends and fathers are, and even brothers to an extent, are far too invested emotionally in the outcome to be overly involved in that process. Okay. That's my opinion. Okay. And it's my professional opinion, by the way. And I think that it's a reason why we need more females to become experts in this. We have a lot of female influencers. We have a lot of females that run around in bikinis with ARs that have a lot of followers, but they don't know how to speak to this nomenclature. They don't know how to set a woman up for success. They don't understand the steps. Some people can do, but not a lot of people can teach. And so I think that I actually found a couple of female apprentices that I've taken on that I'm gonna put them through a year academy. Okay. And I'm gonna teach them how to teach this. And the reason why we need that is not because women should feel better or more comfortable with a female instructor. That's not really the reason why. But it's because we're the same. You're going to choose a gun for subtly different reasons than I am, not significantly different reasons than I am. And that's what I want to make sure, because there's instructors out there that say, well, women learn totally different than men. And not totally. Yeah. There's subtle differences. They're small things. Like women are very to-do listy and check boxy, whereas men are like trigger, pull it. Yeah. That's what you guys love. And I think that if you're going to set your wife or your daughter or your sister or your, whatever it is, up for success in this, I think the best way to do that is to find an instructor, male or female, that just isn't you. Okay. Yeah. And then we expound on it. Like, how do we set women up for success to choose a firearm, right? So this was an issue for a long time. I think it's become less of an issue because we have a lot of these really cool gun ranges that have these really extensive rental inventories where you can try all of these guns before you buy them. But something that I always point out that not a lot of women think about is critical reloads.
Okay.
Does the magazine drop out of the gun, or do you have to yank it out?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of guns that I shoot anymore where it doesn't just drop out, but that was a thing for a while.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, especially like 80s and 90s and 2000s, there was a lot of weird guns that had the mag release at the bottom of the gun, which is kind of wild.
I think it's called the Euro mag release. Yeah, the Euro style.
Which made absolutely no freaking sense at all. But a lot of people don't think about, should I even be carrying an extra mag? You should, because you just don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
you
most
absolutely
people
don't know.
And the thing is, coming from somebody who doesn't always carry an extra mag, I'm about 70-30. 70 I do, 30 I don't. What a lot of people don't realize is most malfunctions are usually magazine related. So
100%. So you should just drop it,
Yeah.
or or pop it, click it, go.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But I think that there's a dynamic to that where women they're usually not taking it that far.
Yeah.
And you have to have, and what I mean by that is women will stop at a certain level and they think
that they're good.
Yeah. And they're not, right? So you got intro to handgun and license to carry, and then women are like, got it, done.
Yeah.
And you ain't done because you don't know how to draw from the holster. You don't know how to do dynamic critical reloads. You don't know about multi-target engagement. You haven't tried unorthodox shooting positions yet. You haven't done my what if scenarios class where we take airsoft pistols and I put you literally in situations where you have to fight somebody. Like, you have to understand, you have to get a little bit of that adrenaline dump so that you understand what it feels like, and and you have to understand the body's 7 natural reactions to stress, stimulus, and fear, and understand that you're not going to have the same fine motor skills that you had when you were calm. This is going to happen, right? And you have to expose yourself to that so that you know what it feels like, so that you can better control it. You haven't taken medical. You don't know TCCC or even basic life support or stop the bleed or tourniquet, even though tourniquets are so easy. All this stuff is foreign to you because you haven't exposed yourself to it. So the best thing for husbands and dads and brothers to do is to really sit down with their wives and go, I love you so much that I'm willing to carve out whatever time it takes for you to get this education. Let me keep the kids. Let me help you out. This is important to our family. I can't tell you how many couples that I have to counsel on this all the time. It's because, sometimes when I have women and I can see that they're visibly distressed when they come to a lesson with me, I'm like, so are you here on your own accord, or did your husband make you come? You know what I mean? You can't force this on people, but women have to understand that there's a duty there to a certain degree. I explained this. I did the ARFCOM podcast not too long ago, and I explained it this way. I was like, if you're in a traditional marriage, which neither one of us are, but I was pondering this the other day, and it made a lot of sense to me because I think that we're seeing a resurgence of the traditional marriage.
Are we?
I think we are. I think that there are a lot, and the liberals hate it because they're trashing, like they'll write articles on, this person considers herself a trad wife, and this is what she wants to do for her husband, and she wants to cook and clean and have babies and all this stuff. I think we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence of that.
I think I'm going to keep that to myself.
But here's the word that everybody hates. Submission.
Yeah.
We hate this word. But I think that we hate it because we don't really understand the actual definitions, plural, of it, right? So if I'm a woman and I want to marry a man, I'm going to probably look for somebody who is kind and discerning and who makes good decisions and who has the physical prowess to protect me. These are pretty much the main things that I would want in a man, right? Well, that's actually the first definition of submission, is to consent to a certain treatment.
Yeah.
Okay? So if this person that I found is all of these things, well, I'm going to consent to that treatment because that treatment is good. Well, now we move to the second definition, which is to acquiesce to a higher authority. Well, if he's all those things, why wouldn't I want him to lead me? Why wouldn't I want him to lead my family? I mean, I have no reason not to. It's pretty simple, right? Well, then we have to take into the account that this person is human and is going to error. Okay. So now my husband's made a mistake that I don't agree with. Okay. He's done something I don't agree with. Well, now I get to present a proposal. I get to submit a proposal and go, I don't think that's the best thing for our family. Can we talk about this together? Okay. Everything's going great. Well, now you have the very last part of submission. So if you are a human that has any logic in their brain whatsoever, you would know that there's no way in hell your husband, who loves you and who is kind and discerning, who has the physical prowess to protect you, whose main mission it is to protect and provide for you, okay? This person can't be with you 24/7. It's impossible. If he is, you're probably in an unhealthy marriage. That's weird. Well, now you're a mom. He's gone. Whose job is it to protect the kids now? It's your job. It's your submission. It's your secondary mission. Okay? And there's a duty there. And I think that if you are a mom or a dad, frankly, and you bring children into this world and you don't even try to learn how to protect them physically, I think you're a bad parent.
I would agree with that. I absolutely would agree with that.
I think you're a bad parent. I think that should be like carved out in the calendar. Man, I have this life that I have to protect now.
Well, I think a lot of people feel like they do that, but they'll stop short of actually getting a gun and getting training with that gun and learning how to use that gun properly, largely in a lot of ways for ideological reasons. But then sometimes I think it's purely off of just fear, which is in and of itself a bit strange to me, but I understand it. But I absolutely agree with you from the perspective.
Fear. I really don't. And this,
the fear thing.
And I know that I come off very aggressive when I say things like this. And it's not intentional. I'm just like, I'm trying to wrap my head around how somebody could just be terrified. I mean, I was raped when I was 16. You know, I grew up in a very abusive household. And you know, you'll see that a lot. You'll see that a lot with women who can really wield a weapon. Now, there's usually a trauma involved there.
So that's the thing I was going to get at.
There's usually a trauma. Now, I kind of had it both ways because I grew up around guns anyway, you know, like at my grandparents' house. But I never really understood or could wrap my head around, you know, this fear because I think that...
Well, I'll tell you why.
Tell me.
You experience trauma, and really what it is you experience the reality of this world at a very young age. And you experience how ugly the world could be. A lot of people don't experience that. A lot of people grow up in a cocoon of reality where they've never experienced trauma to that degree. They haven't experienced what evil actually looks like and what it's capable of. And so when you haven't experienced that in your mind, the most lethal thing in the world is a gun. And therefore it scares them. And so they want nothing to do with it because it is the one constant reminder that they are not immortal. And the only people who, generally speaking, understand their mortality on a very personal level are people who have experienced trauma.
That's a really good explanation. It kind of reminds me of that saying, the worst day you've ever had is the worst day you've ever had.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That's actually a really good...
Yeah. So that's, and I know this from talking to a lot of people who are scared of guns and who were scared of guns. Sometimes also it is projection. Sometimes it is people who don't trust themselves with firearms. And so they hide behind the idea of being afraid of it, or they hide behind the idea that they don't trust other people with firearms because they don't trust themselves with firearms. And I always say, anyone who tells you, I don't want a gun because I don't trust myself with a gun, let them continue to not trust themselves with a gun. Don't force it. Don't force it. Let them not trust themselves.
And I agree with you. I guess I'm of the mind, like, if this is a skill that I can master and I'm not special, I think anybody can do it. And I've proven it time and time again. I mean, I have over 10,000 students under my belt. So I've, and you had asked me in the beginning when, how did I get into this? I just started going to the range by myself. I had taken these defensive pistol classes and I just started going to the range by myself. It was something that I genuinely enjoyed doing. It was like therapy for me. I was just like alone in the bay, me and the target.
I'm the same way. Trust me, I get it.
It was such good therapy. Yeah. And then, back then, because this was 20 years ago, or more even, that I didn't really even pay attention to the fact that there weren't really any other women. It was not very often that you would see another woman on the range, more or less one alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that I never really paid attention to that. But then I would have women that would come up to me, you know, if they were there with their husbands or whatever, and they would say, you know, hey, do you teach people how to shoot? Like, do you think that you could show me how to do that? I was like, sure. I mean, pop in here. I'll show you how to do it. And then about the 5th or 6th time it happened, and that, you know, that's over the span of 5 or 6 months, you know, I thought, man, I could probably charge for that. I think I could make money
from this. Yeah, right.
Doing
Good old capitalism.
Yeah. And so I did it as a side hustle. And then I went full time with it not long after I met you.
Yeah.
I met you when I was doing Frisco Gun Club.
Gotcha.
And then in 2017, I pretty much went full time with it. Went and got my LTC certification and started teaching that too.
Yeah.
And then got a bunch of flack because when we became constitutional carry here in Texas, I got a bunch of flack. I can't remember what publication it was, but somebody had asked me for a quote and asked me how I felt about constitutional carry, and I said, I think we should get it. I think that Texas should have it. I think the LTC was a failed program statistically. I think the education is good, but I think statistically it was a failed program. I mean, as you know, Texas had less than 5% of the population that even got one. You know, but we had over 50% ownership of firearms. But I said we need constitutional carry, and man, I got so roasted on social media by other LTC instructors because they were like, well, you don't care about your community if you don't want people to have an education. I was like, are you not paying attention? We're not the first state to do this. Yeah. All the other states have an average of a 20% increase.
Let's just be honest and say
licenses.
Let's just be honest and say what it was.
They can't pivot their business. It's taking money out of their pocket. I didn't care about that.
Yeah.
I didn't care about that. And you know what? I was worried about it. I thought for a second, I was like, maybe I'm going to lose a huge chunk of my business. I never slowed down. People still want to get their license to carry. People still want to be able to travel with their gun. Yeah. It's a good education. You know, now that it's only $40 in Texas to even get it processed, nobody even cares anymore. You know, so it's not a problem. And I think that it was a big issue for people who were using that as a money-making tool. And, you know, I don't know many, I'm sure there were. I'm just saying that I don't personally know any other LTC instructors that were as busy as me. I taught 243 LTC classes in 2021.
It's crazy.
I mean, some of them were multiples in a day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, and so it's like, you know, if anybody should have been worried about it, it was me because I was making bank. You know, and I was willing to give it all up because we forgot that freedom is why we got into this game. And so if you have a chance to get it back, you know, if you have a chance to get it back, which doesn't happen very often, by the way, you know, you don't take away a gun right
and then usually get it back. That's
or,
like one of the very few times
change a gun law in your favor. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we needed to jump on that for sure. We needed to jump on that.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I do thank you for taking me down the rabbit hole. No, but thank you, Mama. One thing's for certain and two things are for sure. Politicians and tech giants don't want gun content to be recommended to you. And we're all fighting this culture war together. Now, you can help do your part by liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel, but most importantly, sharing this video with at least one person. Together, we can stop the suppression of our 2A rights. And don't forget to click the link in the description section of this video for the products that I mentioned in this video.